Rap News, Street Politics, the best hood channel on YouTube, about to take a deep dive into the homicide of Ezell Leonard, professionally known as YCA 80Bands, as well as the subsequent arrest of Deontay Samuel, also known as Young Threat, along with two co-defendants that also went down in this case. Now, two things are gonna be true in this video and the paperwork that we show. Number one, YCA 80Bands lost his life via multiple gunshot wounds on Manchester between Menlo and Vermont, October 14, 2025. Number two, everybody that was arrested in this case is innocent until proven guilty. And this especially goes for the court of public opinion. Everything we speak on in this video regarding the defendants in this case are allegations that the police set forth to move the district attorney's hand to write a warrant for their arrest. That information has not been proven as fact, and again, all three of the defendants have to have their day in court. So with that being said, we gotta peel the curtain back and bring you all as close as possible to what transpired when two rappers coming out of South Central from two reputable hoods, one on the west side, one on the east side, allegedly ran into each other. Now, some of the paperwork we're going through today, we usually have it for a series that's members only, and it will remain members only after this video called Final Moments. Due to the fact that we have different elements that we'll cover in this video, we've made it public, giving you guys the opportunity to see what we're doing for the members on the back end, where we go through the final moments of individuals that we spoke about on this channel that have lost their lives, where we use a little less gang politics and a little bit more compassion when going through the life of the individuals that we speak on. So with all that being said, we gotta ask that everybody is respectful in the comments, not only of the individual that lost his life in this situation, but also the people that are fighting for their lives, who are, again, innocent until proven guilty, regardless of whatever decisions you feel like anybody made in this situation. We also gotta say viewer discretion is advised, because we will be taking an anatomical approach to this situation as well. But with the somewhat high-profile nature of this case, we gotta start slightly before 1 p.m., October 14th, 2025. Now, this was a rainy day in South Central. Over the last few months, it's been a lot of rain out here, and this was one of those days where Ezell Leonard made his way over here to the Manchester Wellness Center, a weed dispensary on Manchester between Vermont and Menlo. Now, for everybody that doesn't know, YCA 80Bands is from Eastside, A4, Main Street, Mafia, Crip. There's two Main Street sets, one being A4, the other being 9-8. Both of these hoods have been entrenched in the war with the Hoovers for a good amount of time now. This weed shop is right on the borderline of 8 Trey Hoover and 9 Deuce Hoover, less than 5 minutes away from Manchester Park, where you guys have seen multiple Hoover vlogs, videos, things come out surrounding the Hoovers. This is the front line. And at this time last year, this was a very hot spot. Now, YCA 80Bands pulls up in front of this weed shop. There's a Domino's Pizza next door, and in between Menlo and Vermont, there's an alleyway, and closer to Vermont, there's one parking lot, and then on Menlo, there's the Domino's Pizza parking lot. YCA 80Bands pulls in front of the weed shop with his girl. He leaves his girl in the car and proceeds to go into the weed shop. When he got to the door, this is when he meets one of the alleged co-defendants, the security guard of the weed shop, Antonio Greer. Now, Antonio Greer may look familiar. This is Self-Made Buddha, one of the rappers coming out the Hoover section. We've displayed some of his music previously in some of our content, and Self-Made Buddha is over here, a young dude, 24, doesn't let him come into the weed shop and tells him that he needs an ID. YCA was disgruntled, goes back to the car to get his ID. His girlfriend notes that he's somewhat irritable about the situation about needing his face to go into this shop. But he gets the ID and returns back into the dispensary. Now, for everybody that doesn't know how dispensaries work, usually they'll have that front room area, the lobby, the security may be there. You got to give them your ID or whatever, and then they let you into the back with the bud tenders, get your weed, and you get out of there. It's a multi-room process. Now, allegedly, this door has to be locked and unlocked to get inside. The first time around, it's alleged that Antonio Greer wouldn't unlock it. Now that YCA got his face, he unlocked it. YCA is back inside. But around 12:36, it's alleged that Antonio Greer makes a phone call. After the phone call, YCA has finally made it back inside, and it's seemingly him and Greer alone in the lobby. Now, approximately 4 minutes later, surveillance footage catches who they allege are 3 individuals that arrive to the dispensary. It said that these individuals approach YCA. One of them pulls a firearm out and begins to shoot Ezell Leonard multiple times, causing him to fall on the ground. And while on the ground, they remain firing on YCA 80Bands in the dispensary, which subsequently took his life at this moment. Now, again, there was multiple gunshot wounds as a result of this confrontation that happened over here on Manchester. The first gunshot wound was a penetrating wound of the left orbit. The orbit is the eye socket. We see the entry wound was closer above the eye, right below the eyebrow, towards the middle of the nasal cavity. And this wound was not noted to have any stippling or soot on it, which indicates that the shooter was more than 3 to 4 feet away from YCA when the rounds were fired. And this also resulted in an exit wound, which was the posterior head, 5 inches below the top of the head, leaving behind a partially deformed copper-colored jacketed bullet and a gray copper-colored metallic fragment recovered from the side of the head in the soft tissue. Now, the direction of this was backward, rightward, and downward, meaning that the assailant was standing slightly to YCA's right side. And of course, this wound caused hemorrhaging or excessive bleeding along the wound pathway. The second gunshot wound was to the left side of the head, again, not leaving any soot or stippling. And in the same fashion as the last wound, an exit wound was created on the right side of the head, with this one leaving behind no bullet or bullet fragment associated with this wound. The next gunshot wound was another wound to the left side of his head, which was inferior to the last one, being that it was below that wound. Again, no soot, no stippling. The assailant is more than 3 to 4 feet away from YCA at this time. And an exit wound is also on the right side of his head, inferior to the previous exit wound. The next gunshot wound occurred on the left side of his face. Now, this was somewhat around the jawline and along the curvature of his head. No soot or stippling, no bullets or bullet fragments recovered. But with this one on an upward trajectory, the exit wound was on the right side of his head, 2.5 inches below the top of his head. Now, the next gunshot wound was somewhat of a graze, only impacting the skin and subcutaneous tissue. It was a gunshot wound to the left side of the back of the head, exiting out. Again, no soot or stippling, with an exit wound only inches apart. Again, a superficial perforation, not impacting the skull in any way. Now, the last gunshot wound was sustained to the left side of his chest. No soot or stippling on this wound, with it impacting his left clavicle as well as his larynx, which is his neck area and affects the respiratory tract. And the exit wound was on the right side of his neck. No bullet or bullet fragment was found on this wound, and seemingly all but one wound proved to be fatal, with collective brain injuries being the left frontal lobe, the temporal lobe, occipital lobes, and the brainstem. So as we see, this was a tragic and extremely traumatic event that played out in this dispensary. But the police allege that the assailants ran out of the dispensary, saw YCA's girlfriend, took a shot at her. Now, it missed her and ended up striking the passenger window of the vehicle they came in, causing it to shatter. The defendants then entered a black vehicle and fled the scene, leaving behind 8 .40 caliber shell casings. Now, details about this dispensary: not only was it in Hoover Hood, this was a place that was allegedly heavily occupied by the members, with Hoover graffiti existing inside of this place of business. Now, blood samples taken during the autopsy did find traces of codeine, morphine, and hydrocodone in YCA's system. Now, I can't say exactly when those substances were consumed before this incident, but it does bring questions as to, is this what skewed the decision making for YCA to be in this section at this time? That's a question that will forever remain. Now, where do police allege Young Threat and another individual named Brenton Durr to come into the equation? We have to speak about motive first. And one thing that we have to be clear about when we talk about motive is that motive is not a crime. Motive is not enough to convict anybody of anything. And like I said, the evidence that's painted are allegations. But this is where things somewhat paint a different picture. And it starts not only with Mad Ass Trey Soldier from A. Trey Hoover, but it also implicates Africa Johnson, who sadly lost her life at the A. Trey Hoover Hood Day party 2 months before this event on August 4th, 2025. The situation that was one of the pivotal straws that broke the camel's back in the gunplay that we all witnessed in the city towards the end of last year. So with Brenton Durr, with his brother being Mad Ass Trey Soldier, Brayon Durr, who lost his life due to homicide on May 6, 2020, as well as losing his other brother, Infant Trey Soldier, Brent Durr, in the jungles, December 21st, 2021, they also lost another soldier, Tiny Trey Soldier, who was like a brother and a son to Africa Johnson and her kids, and of course, one of the soldiers, Christopher Richardson, who was also killed in the Hoovers, March 19, 2014. So the relationship that the Trey Soldiers share with Threat, he's Lil Mad Ass. And we're effectively talking about the upper echelon of ETH. These were those guys and were those members a part of A. Trey Hoover. And as you can see with all of that, we see a lot of pain in these situations. We released Africa Johnson's final moments to our members only. If you want to become a member, support the channel, that tragic event is available, where somebody's mother and grandmother sadly lost their life. But 2 months later, this is what the police are alleging is the byproduct. So they allege that Antonio Greer made the phone call to Brenton Durr and Young Threat, and they allege that Brenton Durr was the gunman based on the surveillance footage that they acquired from the dispensary. They allege that Threat did not possess a weapon, but all three of them are facing one felony murder, a felony attempted murder on YCA's girlfriend, shooting at an occupied motor vehicle, a felon in possession of a firearm, special allegations for personal use of a firearm, intentional discharge of a firearm, and with Threat and Brenton having felony backgrounds, facing a second strike offense for the homicide that took place over here on Manchester between Menlo and Vermont. Now, again, with all of this being mere allegations, the police allege that they're very aware of the war between Main Street and Hoover, and they've come to the conclusion in their eyes that this is a retaliatory shooting, and again, it's a byproduct of that war. Now, Ezell Leonard, or YCA EightyBands, was 32 years old at the time of him losing his life, October 14, 2025. He was an up-and-coming rapper in the city, and he was starting to find some traction with coming out on interviews, getting spot placements on people's platforms, and releasing his music, trying to get through the door. This was definitely one of their top homies over there in the A4s. He leaves behind kids. He did serve some prison time previously, no smut in his paperwork. And again, the main question that's asked is truly what he was doing at this specific weed shop in this area. Even though Manchester also bleeds across the 110 into the A4s, especially at this point in time, this area definitely should have been a no-go zone. But like I said, this was minutes from his hood as well. Now, Threat, who's 25 at this time, seemingly could have took a different route. All these members were around when they were young. But Threat also went to Tockwitz High in Hemet. He played football. We seen him doing this shit, but the trouble started following him with his juvenile record with 2 charges in 2015. The top of the year that year, January 1st, 2015, juvenile in possession of a firearm. 6 months later, he's hit with a burglary, and he caught his first adult case back in 2018, which he sat down for 2 years for, which was a robbery. Now, that robbery was also in San Bernardino County, and he also had another one alleged against him in Riverside County. But as you see, he got out, got with the rapping, made his way to the Kendrick Lamar album, and he's fighting for his life in LA County right now due to the allegations set forth. Now, Brenton Durr, further down the lineage when it comes to the Trey Soldier name, he's 29 at this time, and he has 4 previous robbery convictions, 3 of which being juvenile, 1 out of LA County in 2018, which he was sentenced 5 years in prison for. And he's also in LA County fighting for his life due to the allegations set forth. Antonio Greer, 2021, he went down for carrying a concealed weapon with a firearm in the vehicle. With him being sentenced for 2 years probation, and again, he had a square gig, had a job, and he's arrested December 16th, the same day as Brenton Dirk, with Young Threat being arrested 2 days prior, December 14th, 2025. Now again, we have to ask you guys to refrain from any legal judgment on these individuals because they have not been proven to be guilty. These are allegations, as we will continue to restate, but these are the allegations set forth in the final moments of Ezell Leonard, aka YCA 80Bands. And like everybody that's lost their life in the streets, we gotta say rest in peace to YCA 80Bands. Now, if y'all want to keep up with this series, make sure y'all sign up for our membership for the members. Shout out to all the members and the subscribers. We got another video already locked and loaded for y'all coming within the next week involving the individual that the internet has grown to know over the last year. Another high profile name. But this Rap News Street Politics, the best hood channel on YouTube. Y'all make sure y'all like, comment, and subscribe. Stay respectful in the comments. You know, this is the tragedy of somebody losing their life. Stay tapped in with us. We out.